Thank you for listening to the Allender Center podcast. I'm Dr. Dan Allender.
And I'm Rachael Clinton Chen. We're fiercely committed to providing hope and healing to a fragmented world.
And restoration for the heart.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get this conversation started.
Rachael, do you have your party hat on?
Yes. In fact, I do. A little tiny party hat that I get out for celebrations in my home.
Yeah, I have my party hat is more like a yarmulke with a little bit of a propeller that goes with it. Nonetheless, this is an opportunity for us to say we've existed for 10 years and we're going to celebrate. Right. And before the audience goes, oh, I don't know if I want to be around for that party. And we've got two really intriguing folks that have been with us from the very beginning and have remained with us through thick and thin. And it's so sweet to be with these two. But I'll let you introduce them. Sure.
Well, we are delighted and privileged to be joined by Cyndi Mesmer and Scott Gibson. And Cyndi and Scott both actually were a part of our very first NFTC Level 1, our narrative-focused trauma care training certificate, back when it was called something totally different. They were a part of our very first cohort. And both of them also currently serve in multiple roles with the Allender Center team. And so they have traversed through many different iterations of this 10-year endeavor that we have been a part of called the Allender Center. But Cyndi is a co-owner of The Art of Living, which is a group counseling practice. She co-owns this with her husband, Steve, but it's a group counseling practice that offers care to those in the community and also some training for professionals and lay care providers. She is obviously married to Steve, and they have 5 children and a dog. Welcome, Cyndi.
Thank you so much. So good to be here.
And Scott also is a private practice therapist, runs men's intensives, and is married with 2 sons and a granddaughter.
Three sons.
3 sons and a granddaughter, which has been a delightful endeavor, I know. And you also have 2 dogs, one of whom is the #1 border terrier in the entire United States of America. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct. No, it's the cosmos. There is no question. These dogs are like, I love Scott. I love Cyndi, but I really love his dogs. And you can, if you're on Instagram, like when I get a new video to watch, like Becky will go, "Are you watching Scott's dogs?" It's like you can see the joy in my face. So anyway, I'm sorry, Rachael. It may be claimed to be national, but it's cosmic.
No, I love that. And we're so delighted that you're with us, Scott. So welcome.
It is delightful to be here. Great to join you all.
So look, we're just going to have a conversation. And I think most people, unless they know a therapist, actually think therapists are fairly bright, wise, and balanced. And we know that's just a lie. We just know it's a lie. And actually, I think everybody knows it's a lie. So just to begin with, to say, you are both remarkably honest, deeply hopeful, gospel living people. So when you began coming into the Allender Center, you're already competent therapists. What possessed you to do this? And I don't know how to put it better than what did you gain from the beginning?
Yeah, such a great question. To be honest, I feel like we might have got manipulated into starting, to be honest. And what I would say is Scott and I were part of a large community church in our area, and the Allender Center kind of approached this church that we volunteered at and served at, and asked, hey, do you have a group of people that would be willing to come and do this training with us, like that we're doing in St. Louis? Actually, at the time, that was the first time we did it in St. Louis. And so that's how it was, presented. And I thought, I have 5 children. Like, it would be a nice vacation. I love to learn things. It's going to be like a conference. I'm going to sit back and take notes, and it'll be like chill and easy. And I had no idea really actually what I was stepping into. No idea. And so that's kind of a little bit of how our journey began, was like, I think we were just invited to participate in a conference. Wow. And it was a very different kind of conference than I had ever been in my entire life. So it became abundantly clear that this was not a conference, probably within the first 10 minutes of Dan speaking. So, Did you say the same, Scott?
Yeah, I actually had that prior summer had been on the Men's Recovery Week for the first time. And so on the way out the door to that week, I think Dan mentioned something like, hey, we're going to be in St. Louis in the fall. It would be great to have you come and join us. And then got approached by the church group to come join with them. So I probably says a little bit more about my sanity level, that I actually had some awareness of what I was stepping into, because I was, after that week, both thoroughly disrupted and confused, and thought, I've got to sit more with these people to understand what is going on here. So I just that's kind of how I came, with a little bit foreknowledge, but mostly didn't know what I was getting into as well too.
Yeah. And he didn't even tell us. Scott, you didn't even tell us anything. You just kept it all to yourself.
Well, I was sworn to confidentiality, of course, right?
Well, it's hilarious that at least, Scott, you had a little bit better idea. But Cyndi, oh my gosh, I though I know you well, I forgot or didn't know that you just sort of fell into the deep end.
I know. It was crazy.
Well, and what was most surprising? I'm sorry, Rachael. I will stand back.
No, I just was thinking, for those listening who have had an opportunity to do any of our offerings, you would know that we do have some conference-like offerings, but definitely the certificate was a, immersive, experiential, small group. You're leaning into stories. So I'm just more laughing at the invitation coming in to come do this kind of conference training, which many of us in lots of different vocations have gone to, where you're gaining information and insight, and you take notes, and the speaker's up there and you're back here, and maybe you get in some intense conversations at lunch about it, but that's the extent of the disruption. So I'm more just laughing and also a little mortified that we're kind of thrust into this environment that is very different than a, conference where you get to just kind of stay in your little spot and take your notes and not have to interact that much. So,
right.
Well, I'd be curious, what was disruptive for both of you and in that beginning process?
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead.
You want to go? Okay. So a couple things. One, I would say the very first session we had with Dan, he started telling a little bit about his story and kind of a little bit of a shady past, I would say maybe. And I remember him kind of going into detail. And I'm I'd read a couple of Dan's books, but I'd never heard him speak, never met him. And I remember him saying, for protection, he used to keep a gun in the back of his pants. Okay. So he's telling these stories, and I'm okay, this is interesting. But he went from that to then talking about how important confidentiality is in the context of our groups. And he went on to say, listen, confidentiality is of utmost importance, and you will not repeat anything that went on in your group, or I will come find you. And I'm I texted my husband, and I'm what in the world did I get myself into? Like, what is this? It was crazy. But so that was like my first real introduction to Dan Allender. And as you began to speak, like there was this kind of odd, like I was so disrupted by what I was being invited into, but so wanted more at the same time. And so it was just this ambivalent feeling of like what you're speaking to and what you're inviting us into is so different than what I had ever experienced before. And then I get to step into a group with a phenomenal facilitator who engaged. I watched him engage other people's stories, and it was disruptive. And it set up for me to want more. So you're right. I did come in with this sense of like, I've already been a therapist for over a decade, but I didn't have any idea like the depths of actually where people are bound in their story until I actually entered into this type of training. And so it was disruptive, but set me up to want more. That's how I started. Now I did kind of pick a fight with my facilitator a little bit because, I wrote a story.
There's a surprise.
Yeah, I know. Well, I wrote a story about my dad, and then he started to like kind of go after my mom. And I'm like, listen, buddy, don't be going after my mom. I had a little protection around my mom. And so him and I battled it out a little bit. So he just remained calm. So I might have thrown a few choice words his way. That's possible. But
just to underscore, I don't carry a gun, but this morning, Becky and I took a walk early in the morning, and I did carry bear spray. So still have a weapon. Scott.
Yeah, I would say similarly, I had been obviously at the recovery week familiar with the beautiful meandering way in which you communicate, Dan. And so I think what was disruptive in the kind of teaching part of it was like, one, my mind was grasping to understand the concept, but I noticed my body doing something completely different. And I just started to feel so seen, so connected. And I often found myself just noticing I was weeping, not even clear why, but there was something being disruptive in the way that you communicated about our story, about how we engage with our stories. And then like Cyndi said, to jump into a group where a trained facilitator doesn't just kind of let you get by with, I had a good Christian mother and father kind of line, and truly challenges and invites you into your body. And I think those were the things that were really initially just, I didn't know what to do with, certainly initially, but it kept me coming back. It was like, I knew I needed to keep coming back because there was something happening in the tears and what my body was doing with listening to you, the other teachers, and in the group process, that I know like there's something really life-giving here that I need to be a part of.
Well, I guess where I'm curious because with you guys coming in as like established therapists into this work that's kind of disruptive and messing with paradigms, I'm just very curious. How did it impact how you went back to realms that you'd already done a ton of work in, your work with people in the therapeutic realm, your relationship with your family. Would love to hear more what that was like, because I know for a lot of people, it's part of some of the barriers to wanting to do the work when you already have such an established way of doing things. So,
yeah, great question. I think for me, like I had said, I already been practicing and had, pretty large practice at that point. And so, and had been offering care and what I thought was really good care to the people I was engaging. And going through this certificate program, it drastically changed my lens in which I saw my clients, how I engaged my clients. I felt like I had the freedom to actually go deeper into not just engage kind of their symptoms that they were presenting as they walk in my office, but to actually, instead of saying like, what's wrong with you? It's kind of like, what happened to you? Like there was a significant shift in regards to how I viewed them. And so it changed how I counseled people. It changed actually how I did my marriage. It changed how I parented my children. It changed how I interacted with my friends. So it drastically changed like how I actually see the world, how I see God, and how I interacted with people, so much that my clients were like, you're kind of different. Like you're kind of different than you were before. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I actually was able to come back and share with my husband, like what I was learning, what I was experiencing, what was shifting in my body, what was shifting in my story, the freedom that I was experiencing that created space and room for me to experience not only healing, but for me to be able to actually kind of, in a sense, shed some of the things that were bound to me for like years or decades. And so I had an opportunity to be able to share that with my husband, who hadn't been a part of the training. He didn't come with me. And so he's like, this sounds really cool. And there was this sense of like, oh, you can tell somebody so much about this, but you really don't get it unless you actually go through it, And so he then ended up doing the certificate program the next year, which was held in Chicago. And I was so grateful because then we could have common language and how we engaged our children and how we engaged our own practice and how we engaged the people that that are not only under our care, but that we work with drastically changed. Mm-hmm. So. Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very grateful.
I'd share similarly too. I think I saw I remember the first year. So like the thing was on Thursday, the weekend went from Thursday through Sunday. We drove back Sunday night and I wasn't thinking this thing through. So the first year I actually saw people fully on Monday. So, which I now wouldn't do to myself, obviously, and wouldn't advise anybody to do that, but I was totally spent, right? Kind of thing. And just, had been kind of through a meat grinder myself. And so trying to like help people. And what was so fascinating about that was like, I saw more powerful things happen on that Monday often, because I entered those conversations with clients so much more connected, so much more embodied, so much more humble, present. And so a big, big impact that I think the training has had on me and continues to invite me into is to enter the heart that I have instead of kind of stay up in my head with strategies or interventions or things to do as a therapist, This obviously then, like Cyndi said, has a disruption in my marriage because, to be honest with you, I did marry above my level. And so when my wife starts hearing me, say some of the things I'm learning, and some of the things that I'm learning are things she had been giving me feedback for decades. So she's both delighted and terrified of like, who is this man becoming? But my marriage is a very different relationship. We've always been best friends, but there's a level of authenticity and openness and honesty about our brokenness that we've never had. So just extremely, extremely grateful to the Allender Center and for you, Dan and Rachael, for your leadership, because it just has rocked my world.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so sweet. I hope people are still listening because it's just good news. I'm grateful for the work we've done, but the privilege of being with people as lovely and odd as you both, and to see redemption, just to hear and see redemption. My soul needs it, particularly in these days. But I had another question that I want, and let me begin with you, Scott. Look, I want you to describe a little bit about what you do with your puppies so that people have a better sense. But what I'm asking is how has this labor invited you and enabled you to play? And just to underscore, I'm not going to go into your story. It's your story. But play has not been, shall we say, one of the realms that you developed a whole lot of expertise in. And you are a very serious, hardworking, deeply committed, good man. But watching you, I love watching your dogs, of course. But frankly, I love watching you with your dogs as much, if not more, because of what I know about you. But I see joy, I see play, I see a goodness. And I've already said too much, but you go ahead.
Yeah, I think, definitely I concur with, grew up in a very Midwestern, hardworking, kind of nose to the ground kind of family. And so very intense. And so that's one of the things I think that really drew me to, as I watched you and the other facilitators, is watch you like have fun and play and laugh kind of thing, And so 10 years ago, I didn't have the dogs. And so at one point during my process, I decided, this would be fun for me. A big part of my story, and really the first time that I met God was through my dog as a 10-year-old, where God brought the comfort of Yahweh to my heart, as a 10-year-old, in a dog competition in 4-H. And so, re-engaging with that story of that 10-year-old, helped me really repair a broken connection with the goodness of that 10-year-old, And so later that day, I actually heard from Jesus, you should get a dog. You need a dog again, And so I woke up and said to my wife, I'm supposed to get a dog, I think. And long story short, 6 years later, Scout and Pip. And so, again, like how that's impacted my life, but also my relationship. My wife comes and supports me and travels, and she's our videographer on the team. And so I said to her one time, you don't have to come. It's a long day to watch these dog events. And, you could do other things, or you don't have to come to every day, And she said something that I'm still figuring out how to take in, but she said, I'll never forget, I love to come and watch you play. And, that's some of the work that I think God did in helping repair this connection with this 10-year-old that just had to not play too much. So I play with the dogs, and it is a blast. And I play with my clients, and I play with my Allender Center supervision group and group, and it is a blast. So I just am, again, beyond grateful just for the joy of playing.
I do need, on behalf of our listeners, a little bit more clarity as to what you do with these two remarkable presences of God.
Yeah, so we compete in the American Kennel Club, has agility competitions all over the country. We compete each weekend that we choose to in dog agility. It's a companion sport where the dog runs around with you and has to follow a sequence of jumps and tunnels and weaves and obstacles. And so we do some training, obviously, for that. And and then have a lot of celebration too.
We're going to move quickly to Cyndi, but I have one more question with you. Like, do you train to run? Because like when I watch the videos on Instagram, I get exhausted. I mean, you're running.
You're running.
The dogs are running, but
especially the younger one, Pip, is a lot faster than me. So you do have to. I do train, and our trainers help us. That's what the videos do, because you see, like, oh my goodness, this is an old man that needs to get some speed up right now. So that helps me. But yes, I do.
Before we shift, I just want to say that you too can follow along on the adventures of Scott and Scout and Pip. If you just search Instagram for Scout and Pip, they come up, and it is quite delightful.
At Scout _ and at _ Pip. Yep.
Cyndi, same question.
Oh, that's so fun. It's so fun to watch Scott talk about his dogs. Scott and I actually live pretty close together, and me and my children had an opportunity to actually watch Scott and Pip, like I was going to dog sit them, and they're just so delightful. And so so we have lots of pictures of Scott and Pip with all my kids. And so that set up for them to actually ask on a daily basis if they could get a dog. So
I knew
thanks for that, Scott.
That's the same with Becky. And the answer is no.
You're welcome, Cyndi.
Yeah, thanks for that, Scott. Thanks. And so we finally relented, and being in a house with 5 kids, that's a lot. There's a lot going on. So we're like, a dog's going to add a lot, which they do. And so we now have a German Shepherd, and she is beautiful and sweet and kind. And what is kind of magical and sacred about her is that she has a different relationship with each person in the family. And so she sees each person really well and meets them where they need her. So if I'm having an incredibly stressful day, like she'll just come and snuggle right next to me. And so for somebody that grew up in more of a kind of avoidant attachment, very, distant parents, to have a dog be able to read me well and then actually offer me comfort and care has been really healing for me. And so I probably owe a thank you to Scott for we now have a dog. So that's been delightful. And I would say too, like, I think when we initially did the training, like the very first training, I think one of the things that was fun for me is that after we would come out of group at the end of night, we had this long day that felt like it was a year. Scott and I and some of our colleagues and friends would just sit and talk and laugh. And you would think after actually engaging trauma stories that like we'd all be serious, but it creates such freedom to actually be able to laugh and to be able to engage in just the joyfulness of being what it's like to actually be alive. And so it was lovely and sweet. And so, it has shifted my ability to actually connect better with my kids. To be able to play with them, to be able to cuddle with them, which, based on my story, like those are things that are drastic changes for me in regards to being able to like love them well, cuddle with them, play with them. Like it just opened a door for like the younger versions of me to then have permission to be able to play, to be able to rest, to be able to enjoy life more. I keep this after the Allender Center, after I did Certificate 1, there wasn't any programs after that at that time. There was just that. And so ever since then, I took this picture of my daughter when she was about the age where I did a lot of my story work around, and I put this picture on my desk at work, just as a reminder of like, oh, I want to reclaim what was stolen from that girl. Like, I want to reclaim her carefreeness, her playfulness, her innocence, her loveliness, that in the stories that in the stories of my life, like, felt like got stolen from me, felt like evil kind of stole and marred parts of me. And so that picture is still on my desk in my office as just a constant reminder to like play, to be carefree, to love well, and to allow others to love well and love me well. So that, that is how I would answer that question.
Again, it's what it evokes in me is, again, just this deep, not just appreciation, which is too small a word, but this deep sense of yes to you, but yes to the wild and wonderful ways the Spirit draws us through his creation, back to pictures of who we are meant to be that were taken from us and yet become, in some sense, a lens of becoming. You're using, rightfully, your daughter as a picture of what you have as a mom have allowed her to be, but perhaps have not allowed your own 8, 10, 12-year-old child to be. And so that's enough. We're not done, but that's enough for me to go, hey, this is worth celebrating. Really worth celebrating.
Yeah.
Before we end, I'd love for you both, because you've been with us 10 years at different seasons and now very richly and fully. What would you hope for with regard to the Allender Center? We're all going to be here, of course, 10 years from now, celebrating 20. What would you want to be saying about the Allender Center 10 years from now?
I think, I feel like everyone needs this. Like, I feel like, I think everyone needs like this kind of healing. And so my desire for the Allender Center is that we have the capacity to train others to be able to go into the world and show them who Jesus is, who Jesus really is, that he is a God that attunes really well to us and creates containment and repair. Like for us to be able to, train people all over this world to actually bring this goodness, so that there might be freedom, like the kind of freedom that Scott and I are talking about. And even though it is disruptive, like it's so disruptive in such a glorious and beautiful way. To tell somebody, hey, I'm going to step into a group and talk about trauma stories doesn't sound all that appealing to most people.
What?
It's like, you're going to do what? What are you going to do? And I'm like, and ever since that first weekend, I've been a part of my own story group in which I continue to engage my own stories, but to tell just somebody who hasn't experienced it, like, yeah, I step into my trauma stories and they're like, what is up? Why would you do such a thing? And I think what I answer to them is like, I want to be the best version of me that God intended. I want to be able to offer to other people what they then don't have. And I think the only way I can do that is if I continue to actually work on my stories. And so when I imagine the Allender Center in the next 10 years, like, oh, wouldn't it be delightful to be able to continue the work that we're doing? not only on a personal level to be able to engage our personal stories, but more of a collective level. Wouldn't it be great if we could actually not only work on healing our own personal wounds, but actually the wounds that are so evident in our world today that we're all a part of? And so, like, I want the Allender Center to be like in the forefront and in the lead and inviting people to healing in a different way. Not only healing personal, but both collective. That is why I'm here. That is why I love this work, even though it's hard at times. Like, that is why I'm here.
Yeah, I'd add to that. I think just, I'm not a theologian, obviously, but I grew up in a Christian environment where you had to know the right answers to the questions and believe and do the right things. And I think, there's no accident that, like, we have a God that is in a human body. And so I think the Allender Center has really invited me and many others into listening, to the God of the universe through the human heart, through your body. And I just imagine that, we get to invite many more and more people around the country, around the world, into that journey that really is so sacred and freeing. And so I just, again, just like Cyndi, just really, as long as I'm here, so excited to be a part of it growing and helping other people continue that journey, as well as my own personal continued journey in that process. So, but to me, that's been the significant shift is that that Jesus is in a body, and he speaks to our bodies, he speaks to our hearts, and we get to together listen and see some of the amazing things that he does in our lives.
Amen.
And let me turn and say, Rachael, you will be here a decade from now.
Well, you have to take that up with Jesus, because I stopped planning that far out because it never really worked out for me. But I'm not going anywhere today. Sorry, Dan, I was not ready to answer this question. I was ready to express gratitude to Scott and Cyndi, but I will try to find.
Yeah.
What I say? Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if there's more that I would add than what has already been named, but just to say, I guess what I would add is that we continue to grow our partnerships in an effort to do that. That this would be a place that, is on the leading edge, but in community and in the sense of we don't have to go it alone. And I'm with you, both of you. Like, I want people to get a taste of God, a taste of Jesus, an experience of the true living God, through any engagement with our team, with our offerings, with our content. And I want people's lives to be transformed so that we can actually be people who do justice and love mercy and walk humbly. And so I in this season that has just felt kind of wrought with a lot of hardship and wickedness in our world, where it feels like the trauma in many ways is unending. I also would love to see the Allender Center be a place where, as you're involved with the labor, you get to experience the joy of co-laboring with people in a mutual way that gives you life and reminds you you're not alone. So that's what I would say. Dan, any thoughts you would like to add?
Well, it'll be right near my 80th birthday, so I'm hoping for a really good party hat. So that's one thing. But I think beyond that, the notion that we have engaged, I think quite well, personal stories, and occasionally making a move into more familial stories. I want us to develop a very rich and deep move into marriages. because it's where trauma shows itself most dramatically, is in a committed covenantal relationship. So to enter that, we've got to deal as well with the larger collective. And that is, due to the prompting of lots of our staff, but also to the crumbling of the systems around us. If we don't address the issues of supremacy, white supremacy, racial trauma, and misogyny, and the reality of what patriarchy has brought to this world, and the relationship of patriarchy to white supremacy, to capitalism, and consumerism, and the violent stealing of lives and resources in a way that literally the earth is not going to be around a lot longer if we do not talk well about why we devour and why we kill. And so I think that's some of what I hope we get to move more into over the next 10 years. With that, I will simply say to both of you, what an honor to be with you, and what an honor to have you bring the array of your gifts, both broken and beautiful, stunning, and to be part of redemption with you, and to bring, in one sense, the redemption you have to others, feels like, again, what we get to celebrate.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so grateful for you both.
Well, that was fun.
The Allender Center podcast is produced by the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology.
If you'd like more information about the Allender Center, you can look at theallendercenter.org.